Hello, my movie peeps. I just got done watching John Wick 4, and with this fourth installment in the John Wick franchise, we follow Mr. Wick on a journey to earn his freedom. On this journey, John Wick will encounter several dozens, maybe even hundreds of assassins trying to take him down, even getting the attention of the High Table, the people who control the Assassin Society. That's all pretty much. I'll give any spoilers to you guys. This will be a spoiler-free review. John Wick 4, man. You know, I still remember the time when the first John Wick movie was about to come out. They released the trailer like 1 month before the movie was hitting theaters, and everyone was laughing at it. Everyone was like, Keanu Reeves trying to still be an action star here. They killed his puppy in the trailer. Big whoop. You see the movie, it was pretty dang good. Then the rest is kind of history, right? John Wick 2 came out, blew us all away. They expanded this assassin universe, gave us such great choreographed fight scenes. 3 up the ante even more. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't know what I was expecting for part 4. I thought they had already pushed the limits to what they could do with John Wick. Y'all, you was not ready for John Wick 4. Thankfully, my screening of John Wick 4 was held in an IMAX theater, and I kind of highly recommend that to you guys. This is the ultimate action movie, not even exaggerating a little bit. When I tell you John Wick 4 is like 70 to 60% all action scenes, you can take my word for it. I really want to tip my hat to the stunt performers in this movie, because I'm willing to bet money every single stunt performer available in Hollywood showed up in this movie. I honestly think you can take the body count John Wick had in 1, 2, and 3, add them up together, John Wick 4 would still beat it. Director Chad Stahelski and the writing team in here just continue to know how to expand every corner of this assassin universe that John Wick has created and keeping it fresh and still a little grounded. I think that's one of the biggest things that helps separate the John Wick universe from just your typical action movie. Sure, they have choreographed some fantastical fight scenes that we's gonna talk about, but I think a lot of us find a lot of intrigue in this assassin universe, and with this fourth film, they really explore the world. We're going all over the place here. I've mentioned how the role of John Wick perfectly suits Keanu Reeves and plays into his strengths. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue in this movie. Like, I'd be curious how many words he actually speaks, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's like under 100. But part 4 had the addition of some newer characters in here that I just could not get enough of. Starting off with Donnie Yen. He plays a character by the name of Kang, who is a blind assassin that possibly also has a history with John Wick. That's also something I'm loving about these movies. They continue to hint to you this past life John Wick had. We forget that the first movie, John Wick is basically entering retirement. He had a whole couple of decades behind his belt of assassin work he did. And it feels like with every sequel where they hint to more backstory about John Wick and what his life was like before, it really paints a picture and makes you go, they're definitely going to make a prequel someday. It won't be with Keanu Reeves, but whenever the studio decides to, they's gonna make a John Wick prequel, and they're gonna take all these story elements and throw it into a film. But back to Donnie Yen, a masterful artist in martial arts choreography in Hollywood right now, and what he's able to do with this blind assassin, which right out the gate I was like, this is the guy they're gonna hire to try and kill John Wick, a blind man? Oh, that's a big strength of John Wick 4, you know, because like I like John Wick 3. I thought it had also some really cool action set pieces, great choreography as always, but I felt like the action scenes grew stale there. Towards the end of the movie, I was kind of exhausted and numb to the fight scenes. It felt very repetitive, the whole gun fu and hits to the shoulder and then hearing the characters I know it feels like a sin to say there was too much action, but there was just too much repetitive action towards the end of John Wick 3, where I was just kind of like, man, this movie's really taking its time. John Wick 4, this is a 3-hour-long movie. It has a bit of a slow start, but once you get to the first action scene, and then the time just flew by for me. I did not feel that 3-hour runtime. And a lot of that is because of the refreshing things they do here with, like I said, a blind assassin, Donnie Yen, and the story behind this character. That was a lot of fun to see. Bill Skarsgård, also a neat surprise in here. I think his character gets like some of the best dialogue of the film. Just hearing every sentence come out of his mouth, I'm like, yo, that's like really poetic. I'd read that in a fortune cookie probably. You know, he works as sort of the main villain of this film, and although I would have liked more of him, what Bill Skarsgård gets to do from beginning to end of the movie, loved it. We also have another assassin in here played by Shamir Anderson, who goes by Mr. Nobody or a tracker. He felt like the most wild card of the group, but again, to keep things fresh and unique, they gave him an interesting trait. He goes everywhere with his little German Shepherd dog, that dog is a menace. The action scenes they were able to pull off here with this assassin going after Wick and all these other people at the same time, having a dog also fight these assassins, it sounds ridiculous, but it looks cool on screen. And those are like the standout, lovable new people that you'll come to enjoy in John Wick 4. I'm not even talking about some of like the boss fights in here, because John Wick 4 almost had like a video game quality to it where there's stages here. John Wick has to go through a series of missions to get to the very end of the movie, and each mission has its own little boss. Some people might recognize the name Scott Adkins. He's also a martial artist in Hollywood, and he's covered in like fat prosthetics playing this big fella fighting John Wick. He was kind of a fun little villain to see him fight. But aside from the different character of bosses in here, John Wick 4 also does some interesting things in terms of set pieces, okay? You have these unique action scenes where sometimes it's just your typical gun shooting and fighting or whatnot, but there's this one sequence where you're like watching from a bird's eye view. I compare it to another kind of video game. Some people might have played these kinds where you're watching from the ceiling as your character goes in and out through doors, and it's like split up in 2 takes. So one really long take and then a cut, then another really long take, and all of that was just mesmerizing to see. It makes you really wonder, how hard did they work on this movie? Because there's definitely visual effects involved in John Wick 4, but it's hidden seamlessly. So much of the action going on screen, I'm seriously asking myself, how did they do that safely? How are these stunt performers not in wheelchairs, not broken ribs and bones? Because yeah, you'll get the occasional person that gets hit by a car and obviously looks like some sort of CGI person. But then there's other times, man, where something happens and you're like, that looked a little too real. But again, because every different action scene and set piece is given something new to play with, feels different than what we've seen before, I didn't get bored with the amount of action they threw our way. You know, we praise Tom Cruise for doing these insane stunts for the Mission Impossible movies, and he definitely deserves that recognition and how far he goes for his movies. But as you're watching this, take the time to think what Keanu Reeves is doing in the role. There's one really long action sequence involving 200 flights of stairs, okay? And I need you to imagine the week, the month, however long it took to film that entire action sequence and spending 8 to 6 hours of your day going up and down these stairs, doing these fake fights and choreographies. That is exhausting work. Keanu Reeves isn't as young as he used to be. The man is 2 years away from being 60 years old, and just some of the stuff he does on screen, hats off, Keanu Reeves, man. I don't know how you did it. But okay, bringing my excitement down and trying to pinpoint some of the things I didn't absolutely love about this movie. For one, it's an issue I had with the third film. John Wick is just feeling invincible. I felt like early on in the series, they did a good job of making John Wick, you know, a very high-skilled professional assassin, but he would get a knife wound time to time. He'd get shot, he'd get wounded, he'd slow down a bit, and here, man, it's like he's the frickin' Terminator. You know, the third movie, they had that ending where he falls off a building and then survives that. They kind of continue to do ridiculous stuff like that where you're like, there's no way you survived that, John Wick. But again, I feel like that's just a minor gripe, okay? I feel like they've earned the right to make John Wick this sort of impenetrable or lucky where he gets saved last minute so many times. And you know, to be honest with you guys, that's like my only gripe. You know, I feel like the Mission Impossible series and John Wick are doing a great job of, as their sequels continue, they do more crazy, ridiculous things without exactly falling into that Fast and Furious trope. The other thing I'll say is, I think the ending of this movie might be a little controversial, or just have fans talking, and I can kind of understand that. As soon as the ending happened, I had one person in my audience go boo, and I was like, okay, but like, you know, I actually liked it. There's, of course, an obvious debate you can have with the ending that I don't want to get into here, but I honestly didn't mind it, and the way they decide to wrap up this story, I feel could be a good wrap-up for the entire John Wick series. You know, the director recently came out and mentioned that if they are going to make a 5th movie, it'll be some time. They're not going to jump into it right away. They're going to wait a couple of years if the audience wants it, but if they decide to end it right here on 4, I'll be kind of satisfied with this ending. I think it'll be a good way to wrap up the series because it feels like it almost comes full circle from the way things began. So with John Wick Chapter 4, I'm going to give action 5 stars, guys, okay? John Wick 4 is literally going to be the action movie of all action films. If I didn't give this film 5 stars, I don't know what else deserves it. Comedy in the movie, I'm going to give it 3 stars. The John Wick series knows how to sprinkle in those moments of humor, especially in the action scenes. There's like a slapstick nature to it where characters are killed off in funny ways, and it gets the audience hyped. Drama in the movie, I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I just love that it's not just guns, violence, dumb assassin stories. They try implementing some expansion of the universe. They bring the John Wick story arc full circle. I think they did a good job with the story in here. Horror in the film, I'll give 1 star to if you're like sensitive to blood and body parts flying around, but it's not particularly a gory film. You'll have your splatter of blood here and there, but I don't think anything that glorifies a lot of red on screen. And suspense, the movie, I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars. With John Wick being so invulnerable and being able to get out of so many different situations, there is a part of you that doesn't get worried about his survival throughout the movie. But thanks to this movie also introducing you to other fun, lovable characters, you do worry about them and where they might end up, or heck, how the story ends. Casual fans to the John Wick universe, I'm gonna give this an A-. Cinephiles, I'm gonna give it an A+. And critically, I'm going to give it an A-. For John Wick 4, it deserves the 3C guarantee. I highly recommend you guys go check out John Wick 4. I truly mean it when I say this is an action film that's going to go down in history for some of the craziness they put on screen. Make sure you use the bathroom beforehand. It's a fun 3-hour ride, and there is a post-credit scene at the very, very, very end of the movie. You can stay tuned for that. But anything and everything, be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.